What's up guys? So in this video, I just want to let you know before we get into it, this video has been pre-recorded. I've edited each video in parts because the original video was like over 1 hour long, so I had to cut it down. So I'm going to be releasing them into parts just so it saves me a bit of time while editing. I can take breaks in between. It's just too long to edit in one whole session, and I had to edit so many different facts into the video, and it's a very time-consuming process. So I do hope that it's at least watchable and you can learn something, and hope you enjoyed the video, and let's get to it. So I'm back guys. So this video is going to be a long one. I'm doing it because it's educational and it's going to help a lot of people. We'll go into some actual proper facts, and we'll go some less stuff people already know. Like people already know about animals and all that. So we'll talk about some actual facts, okay? The hardest type of wood does come from Australia. Australian hardwood. We do have some of the hardest wood in the world. If you've ever tried splitting wood with like an axe, everyone always says, oh, but you gotta try the Australian hardwood. I bet you can't split that. And yeah, you really can't split Australian hardwood, trust me. Not that I'm like the most muscular guy in the world, but even if I was, you'd have a very difficult time splitting it. So next, Australia does have the most potent psilocybin mushrooms in the world. Yes, that's right. So psilocybin mushrooms, also called magic mushrooms. There's a lot of different types of magic mushrooms, but these in particular are psilocybin ones. They all have different nicknames, but Australia's most potent one is called the P-subs, which I'm not sure what the second most potent ones are in the world, but psilocybin sub, I'll put it on the screen, a little fact for you to check out. So the biggest earthworm I should say is from Australia, not tapeworm, because I'm pretty sure tapeworms could probably get much longer, but the biggest worm does come from Australia, even though I do believe it also found in other parts of the world. It's in Australia too. It can grow to about 1 meter in length, I'm pretty sure, and these things are gigantic. So next, Australia is the drunkest country in the world. There was actually a study done, and it said on average Australians get drunk 27 times per year compared to the global average of 15, which is like almost double. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Australia seems to get a lot of these records, and a lot of them aren't really good. Like, they're not really good things either. So with that said, Australia has the world's largest reserves of iron ore, with a total of 30% of the world's total iron ore, and we're the 5th highest producer of nickel. This fact isn't really that interesting, except iron ore is pretty much iron in rock formation, and I think it's found in a higher concentration of some rock or whatever, but we have pretty much like the highest reserve of iron ore in the world. So yeah, Australian mining industry is actually quite big, quite successful here. Australian mining industry does basically pay for everything here. That's why the mining industry is so powerful. We do have a lot of, we have a lot of things we mine. Australians are the richest people in the world based off the highest medium wealth per adult. And this was actually a study, I believe, according to Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report. So it's a global wealth report. Australians had pretty much came up the richest people in the world. So this is on average, it's not like the richest guy. It's just like on average, the medium wealth. What does it say? Medium wealth per adult. Now, I wish I was capitalizing on this wealth because I am poor as F, but if you are one of those people that are benefiting from the richness, then good on you, because I am not one of them. Okay, so another fact, the Great Barrier Reef is the largest ecosystem in the world. Great Barrier Reef, obviously Australia, everyone knows the Great Barrier Reef. I don't think I need to say much more about that. But yes, it's the largest ecosystem in the world. So Fraser Island is the largest sand island in the world, but Tasmania is Australia's biggest island. Okay, so Australia actually has the largest sand island in the world. It's called Fraser Island, but yeah, Tasmania is technically bigger, but Tasmania is not considered a sand island, even though it is the biggest island in Australia. And it is actually one of our states here too. So Tasmania is one of our states but it is also an island. So what we also have is the marsupial lion was an extinct animal that used to live in Australia. Had the strongest bite force of any mammal in history. So that's pretty cool. I mean, Australians love their animal facts and stuff. We like to be known to like dangerous, scary animals. So there's another one to add to your list. Too bad it doesn't exist right now, but if you were living at the time when it was extinct, I don't even know if humans coexisted at the same time, but the strongest bite force of any mammal in history. Pretty crazy. Marsupial lion. So another thing about Australia is most of Australia used to be an inland sea called the Eromanga Sea, actually. And the thing with this is most of Australia was actually underwater, right? So you'll see from like satellite imagery, Australia looks like it's mostly sand. And that's because most of it was actually underwater. And there's a lot of other reasons too, like the wind direction, the rain, where the rain goes. And it's just pretty complicated, like the meteorology and the weather and all that stuff in Australia, how it doesn't really rain much in the desert either. So that's kind of why it's also sand and there's not that many plants there. Wind, erosion, all these other factors, but mainly because Australia used to be an inland sea. You'll find a lot of fossils out there actually where the inland sea used to be. And a lot of these fossils were aquatic animals like turtles, dinosaurs even, so that's interesting. Here's a fact, there is no active volcanoes in Australia. So if you have a fear of volcanoes, there's no active volcanoes in Australia. Fingers crossed it stays like that. Even though volcanoes are pretty important because they create islands, they create biodiversity, they put minerals back in the soil, back into the environment, they create rock, everyone knows there is a lot of benefits with volcanoes. It first comes destruction, then comes a lot of benefits after that. Australia has terrestrial leeches, which are land leeches, in other words. They're leeches that live in wet, humid environments, but not necessarily in water, but they do exist on land. So you could be walking through a rainforest and you'll get land leeches on you. So next we have another fact. Australia is the flattest continent. So I actually had to rewrite this fact because I originally said is it the flattest country, which is not true. I believe that's Maldives or something. But continent, Australia is the flattest continent, meaning it's pretty much flat. The highest elevation or whatever, we don't have much elevation in Australia, but that's not really the point. I believe elevation is completely different as well. I'm pretty sure the way you actually measure it is like the most amount of flat land per country or per continent, whatever it is like that. So leaving elevation out of it, because I'm sure there is probably certain parts of Australia where there is elevation that do get higher or whatever. So just the flattest continent based on most amount of land that is relatively flat. Okay, so here's a cool fact. Turquoise Bay was ranked the second best beach in the entire world, and Whitehaven Beach was ranked the third best in the world. So basically there is this, I can't remember exactly, I might have to put the fact on the screen or something, but there's this website or whatever that ranks the best beaches in the world. I don't know how they do it, but two of Australia's beaches were ranked second and third best beaches in the world. We do have some of the nicest beaches in the world. So if you really like the beaches, Australia is home to so many good beaches here. Okay, so we also have red lakes in Australia. Australia has a lake called Lake Hillier, and it is actually pink or red. The water, yes, it's literally pink. And I believe that is because of a certain algae or bacteria or something like that. And even though you can actually go there and see this lake yourself, I believe it's not as red or pink as it used to be because of environmental changes which have led to the lake getting less red and less pink over time. Mostly man-made changes in the environment, which obviously humans ruin a lot of things, but unfortunately this red lake is not going to be red or pink for that much longer, but you can still see it now, and it is still pink and red. The Northwest, or Cape Grim in Tasmania, has the cleanest air on the planet. So if you really want to breathe in the cleanest, freshest air you can get, Northwest Tasmania has the cleanest in the entire planet. I mean, not just like out of all the countries, I mean on the planet. Like you could go to any other point in the entire world, and that one point on the entire world or on the entire planet is the cleanest air, and it's Tasmania. Okay, so Australia has the 7th most islands in the world. So this, not really that much of an achievement. I mean, number 7, I mean, it's in the top 10 most islands in the world, but I mean, it's not really top 3, so it's not that important, but yeah, 7th most islands in the world. We do have a lot of islands, okay? And a lot of our islands are actually really nice to go holidays on. So if you do come to Australia, you may want to visit one of our beautiful islands. And the water is so beautiful, it's so blue as well, so you really love that. So there is a species of fungus called Fusarium oxysporum, which also causes Fusarium wilt in plants. This particular plant, particular fungus that causes disease in plants, it actually is known to draw gold from the soil in its environment and attach gold to its strands, okay? So I have to read that off my notes below. But it's a fungus that draws gold from the soil and attaches the gold to itself. I don't think it's really gonna help you in the gold rush or anything like that. Maybe if you do want to look for gold somewhere, that could be a good indicator to tell you that there's gold nearby. If you do find lots of Fusarium oxysporum in the area, there may be gold nearby in the area. Just a little tip. Since 1983, at least 5 of Australia's prime ministers have been deposed or ousted, which is like forcefully kicked out, in other words. And 4 out of those 5 were after the year 2007. And generally within like 3 years apart of each other, they were kicked out. So 5 of our prime ministers. So that's about 5 of our prime ministers we did not vote for. The public didn't vote for these 5 prime ministers, and yet we've had the worst politics in government the last 13 plus years. It's just been horrible. Our government has really been trash. And mainly because we didn't vote for a lot of the people that were in there as well. Unfortunately, the people we did vote for got deposed, ousted, and we were stuck with these horrible prime ministers, unfortunately. So here's something. Australia generally has something called La Nina and El Nino, which is a certain weather phenomena out in the sea. Something to do with the winds and all that, but it affects the weather we get here. So the last 3 years or whatever in Australia, we've had, I believe, a La Nina, and this has caused horrible flooding. It's caused like farmers to be devastated by like all this rain, and towns have been flooded, people have like lost their houses and all this stuff, and so much damage has been caused. But yeah, the La Nina, we do get that here in Australia. And El Nino is kind of the opposite of La Nina, where it gets really dry and then we go through drought. La Nina is the opposite, where we get floods and too much rain and all this stuff. You either get drought or floods, and both aren't really good. But the benefit is we don't get La Nina and El Nino every year. The downside is science is saying that they're going to be a lot more common now because of climate change and all that. So we're going to have a lot more drought and flooding in the future, unfortunately. So that's not good. Australia has the 2nd most deadliest fungus in the world. It's called the poison fire coral fungus or something like that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was introduced here. Like it introduced fungus. So I'm not sure if it's native. I'll have to fact check that, but we do actually have the 2nd most deadly fungus here. Now, what's cool is there is actually a species of coral that's also called poison fire coral. Now, this isn't a fungus, this is actually a coral, and it is actually poisonous, and it is Australian, but it is threatened species here in Australia, although I believe it is a hydrozoa, which some types of like jellyfish hydral zones, like the freshwater jellyfish is actually related to these corals, and they sting and they hurt, but they're threatened. So you'll see them often in the reefs and stuff like that. So Australia has a lot of big things, okay? And I'm not talking about your dirty mind, okay? But we do have a lot of like landmarks and stuff that are big, because Australia is just kind of like obsessed with big things. I don't know why, but we have exactly 230 big things in Australia. These big things are literally just random things, like tourist attraction kind of things, like the big banana, the big apple, the big pineapple, the big lyrebird, the big earthworm, the big this, that, blah, blah, blah. Big everything. We have a big, literally everything, and they're just like, not statues, or maybe like a big statue or a big building, that's just something big, okay? And we have 230 big things, so you can actually just kind of look it up yourself, and you can just see the list of all 230 things, because I'm not going to put them all on screen for you, but if you want to visit Australia, consider seeing some of these big things. Another good thing about Australia is we have a very high minimum wage, which also, compared to other countries, our minimum wage is like $20 an hour or something. Approximately $20 an hour, if I remember correctly. I will try and put the actual price on the screen for you. I'm pretty sure we do have one of the highest minimum wages in the world, which means generally anyone that works gets paid a decent amount. The problem is we have also one of the highest costs of living in the world, so the cost to actually live is ridiculously high. So here's something cool. Our Australian cities like Melbourne and Adelaide and Sydney and all these other places, a lot of them were voted in the best places to live in the world, or I should say best cities in the world to live. More than, I know Melbourne for 10 years in a row was voted the best city in the world to live. Obviously that changed because of our government and the pandemic and a bunch of other stuff. It's still in the top 10 always. It's always in the top 10 best places to live in the world. My hometown where I live, Melbourne, one of the best cities in the world to live. But don't forget about the other cities too, like Sydney, Adelaide and this. But even though, here's a little secret, Adelaide sucks. There's nothing in Adelaide to see. Like, you can go there and there's absolutely nothing there. No one cares about Adelaide. And if you want to know another fact about Adelaide or South Australia, there's tarantulas in South Australia. So that's one of our spiders you'll also see in Australia is tarantulas. What we have in Australia is quicksand. So quicksand, obviously a danger if you're out in the wild. If you're in the outback where it's very sandy, we do have quicksand that is a problem for you, so you've got to watch out for quicksand. It can be dangerous. But I believe Australia does have like a lot of camels here in the wild. Australia is one of the largest exporters of camels. So we actually export a lot of our camels to the Middle East and other countries as well. I don't believe our camels are not native, but they've been here long enough to kind of adapt to our climate, and then we export them. So we have a lot of camels in the wild everywhere, mostly in like Western Australia though, so that's Western Australia. But yeah, if you didn't know that, we have a lot of camels here. More camels than the Middle East too, I'm pretty sure. So if you didn't know that, I think Australia has maybe the most camels in the world. I'll have to fact check that. So here's something cool. If you haven't seen the movie Wolf Creek, there was actually a serial killer called Mick Taylor, and he basically, was a serial killer, really famous story here in Australia. They made a movie about it called Wolf Creek, so that's another fact. If you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. But pretty much he would just basically take hitchhikers off the road, people that were hitchhiking, he'll pick them up and then he'd commit his crimes. What else we got here? We got bats. Australia has a lot of different bats, from micro bats to giant flying fruit bats, also called flying foxes. We have all different bats. They are native. They are very important. Our bats are one of our largest and most important pollinators of our plants in the world. So bats, although they may seem like a huge pest, they're very important. They're pollinators, but they spread seed too. So they eat the fruit and then they poop the seeds out, and they also help kind of spread plants around the country. So very important. You need our bats here in Australia. Killer whales. Australia has, if you didn't know, a lot of orcas or killer whales. Very intelligent animals, even more dangerous than sharks. Probably the most intelligent animal in the ocean. It is a mammal. Yeah, I'm not an expert on killer whales or orcas, so I can't tell you too much about them, but we do have orcas here in Australia. What we do also have in Australia though is crocodiles. We have freshwater and saltwater crocodiles. The most dangerous are saltwater crocodiles. These are the largest type of crocodiles. So what many people don't know about crocodiles is we don't have crocodiles over the whole country. The crocodiles being reptiles, but also they need certain climate and weather to survive and live. So you only really see crocodiles the very top north of Australia. The more tropical countries, like northern Australia, all along the top kind of coastline of Australia, that's where you'll find your crocodiles and stuff. Salt waters. So if you're at like the bottom half of Australia, the southern parts of Australia, you can go swimming at the beaches, in the lakes and everything. You're gonna be relatively safe. You cannot go swimming in pretty much any body of water if you live in the northern part of Australia. That's just unfortunate. So people that live in the northern parts of Australia, you probably never get to swim in the beach, in a lake, in a creek or anything, because there's going to be saltwater crocodiles and they're very dangerous and they get gigantic, even bigger than gators. So what else we got? Also in the northern part of Australia, we have sawfish. A sawfish, it has a very big nose that looks like a saw. And these are quite large fish. I think they are actually a type of shark. So I might have to double check that, but I believe they are a type of shark. But what we also have is, I think, swordfish, marlinfish, and sailfish. I think we have swordfish, marlinfish, and sailfish here as well. I may not be 100% correct, so if I'm wrong, I'll just edit all that out, but yeah, these are very dangerous fish. A lot of people go fishing for them, and that's where the danger is. If you're actually fishing for them, they can jump out the boat and they can impale you and kill you. I believe people have actually been attacked, well not attacked, but impaled by these fish, because they have these bony, protrusion-y nose or beak, I'll say, and it can stab you, impale you. So here's a cool little fact people don't know. It was quite a few years ago, but there was something called thunderstorm asthma going around in Australia, and people were dying from thunderstorms. They were getting asthma from the thunderstorms and dying. Now, the science behind this, I believe, was pollen or something in the air. So as it would thunderstorm, the rain would hit these plants that had pollen or grass, and it would send pollen into the air, and it would create this just this really bad amount of pollen in the air. Like the air pollution from pollen was just ridiculous. People were dying from thunderstorm asthma. So that's what they ended up calling it, thunderstorm asthma. And that was a legitimate threat you had to worry about in Australia. I believe it's still probably a thing, you know. Sometimes the pollen number in the air is just crazy, like the air quality of pollen. What else we got? I know Tasmania has a lot of opium fields. I'm pretty sure we are one of the largest exporters and growers of opium. I don't think the largest. I believe Afghanistan or some other country is the largest opium exporter, whatever. I'll put the facts on screen just so I don't have to correct myself, but Tasmania grows a lot of opium. I'm pretty sure the exact quantity I will put on the screen, but the opium is mainly for therapeutics, medicine, and like all that kind of stuff. It's not illegal opium, it's legal farming for like pharmaceutical companies and stuff, okay? So with that said, most of Australia pretty much has laws against guns and stuff. But what you didn't know, Australia doesn't actually have the same gun laws all over, that's what I'm saying. So Tasmania has different gun laws to the rest of Australia, but most of Australia still you can possess guns or firearms, I should say. And basically, while some guns are illegal, you still need a license and all this stuff to get guns here. So they are very highly regulated. They're not illegal to own if you do have permits and stuff. So you can actually still get them. It's just they do background checks and all this stuff to make them a lot safer. So Contrary to popular belief, Australia does have guns and you can legally own them, but you just cannot own automatics, semi-automatics, or concealable guns, okay? And you have to be kept in the gun safe, and background checks, mental health checks, all this stuff. So you need permits, licenses, and so much to get them. Like, a lot of people just don't really end up getting them anyway.